Okay, let's go ahead and start with the Namo Tassa refuges for those who like to recite them. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. Dhammang Saranang Gacchami. Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami. Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami. Tatiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. So welcome, friends, to this Wednesday night Sutta class. And so the suttas this week, there's two of them, kind of twin suttas, the Shorter and Greater Discourse to Malunkyaputta. Now, Malunkya was a monk. And Malunkyaputta means the son of Malunkya, so perhaps his father was named Malunkya. That's where some of the monks got their names, like even Sariputta, it comes from being the son of Sari. But anyway, so this monk was kind of a mischievous monk, you might say, not a bad monk necessarily, but he had a hard time learning a little bit. So this occurred at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove. And then Malunkyaputta was meditating alone, and then a thought came into his mind. He said, these speculative views that have been left undeclared by the Blessed One. And he sets these views aside, and they're rejected by him. And so I'm going to read these views because these are repeated quite often in the suttas, that the world is eternal, or the world is not eternal. So this is a view that whether this Earth and solar system, is eternal, that, it never disappears. Of course, according to astronomy, we know that after millions, billions of years, it could, disappear. But anyway, that was a question that a lot of philosophers had. Is it eternal or not eternal? And the Buddha just refused to answer. And then he asked, is the world finite or the world infinite? Is the soul the same as the body? And the soul is one thing and the body another? And after death, does the Buddha exist or not exist? Although he says that Tathagata. Or does after the death of the Tathagata, does neither exist nor not exist? So the Buddha does not declare these things. He doesn't answer these questions. Malunkyaputta maybe thought they were important questions. And maybe some of these other philosophers that lived at the time of the Buddha also, maybe they like to answer these kind of questions just to show that they know something. But So he says, the Buddha does not, answer these questions to me. And I do not approve of and accept the fact that the Buddha does not, tell me these answers to these questions. I'm going to go to the Buddha and ask him the meaning of this. If he declares to me the answers to these questions, then I will keep living as a monk under him. So, he comes to this conclusion. I'm going to give the Buddha an ultimatum. If you don't answer these questions, I'm going to disrobe. And he says, I will abandon the training and return to the low life. So he's referring to the lay life. So he used to call that the low life. Don't get offended, okay? For you lay people. So then in the evening, Malunkyaputta goes to the Buddha, and after paying homage to him, he sits down on one side. And then he tells the Buddha all the things that he was thinking about, and tells him, about you've never declared these questions to me. And then he says, if the Blessed One does not know either the world is eternal or the world is not eternal, then it is straightforward for one who does not know and see, like the ordinary person, that I do not know or I do not see. So the Buddha should have said, he's thinking that the Buddha should have said, I do not know or I do not see. But the Buddha didn't do that. He just kind of refused to answer. And then the Buddha replies to Malunkyaputta. He says, did I ever say to you, come Malunkyaputta, become a disciple of mine, live the holy life under me, and I will declare to you the answers of these questions? And Malunkyaputta says, no, Venerable Sir, you didn't say that to me. That wasn't a condition of my getting ordination with you. So the Buddha replies, that being so, misguided man, who are you and what are you abandoning? So he's directly criticizing Malunkyaputta that, he didn't ask him for those questions when he got ordained. And so sometimes the Buddha called some of these monks misguided or foolish for some of the things that they did. And then the Buddha goes on to say, if anyone should say thus, I will not lead the holy life under the Blessed One until the Blessed One declares to me the answers to these questions. Meanwhile, that person would die. In other words, that person could ask him hundreds of times and the Buddha is not going to answer those questions. And that person would die before the Buddha, on his own, for whatever reason. That person would die before the Buddha declares the answers to those questions. And then the Buddha gives a very nice simile. He said, Malunkyaputta, suppose a man were wounded by an arrow, thickly smeared with poison, and his friends and companions and relatives brought a surgeon to treat him, brought a doctor to treat him for the poison arrow. And the wounded man says, no, I won't let the surgeon pull out the arrow until I know whether the man who wounded me was a noble or a Brahmin, or he wants to know the caste of the person who shot the arrow. And then he said, I won't let him pull out the arrow until I know the name of the man who wounded me, until I know whether he was a tall or short, or of middle height, until I know whether the man was a dark brown or golden skinned, or until I know whether the man who wounded me lives in which village or town or city does he live in, or what kind of a bow did he use? Was it a long bow or a crossbow? What kind of bowstring did he use? Was it made of fiber or reed or sinews or hemp or bark? Until I won't let him pull out the arrow until he knows what kind of feathers was the shaft made of. Was it a vulture's feathers or a heron or a hawk feathers or a peacock or a stork feathers? So he wants to know all these questions. Until I know what kind of arrowhead it was that wounded me. And then the Buddha tells him, all this would still not be known to that man, and meanwhile he would die. In other words, the doctor came to his house to treat him. He says, no, I got to have the answer to all these questions before you pull out the arrow. Well, it's going to take him a long time to get all those answers, and the man would die. So the Buddha replies, so too, Malunkyaputta, if anyone should say, I will not lead the holy life under the Buddha until he answers those questions, that person's going to die before the Buddha answers those questions. And then the Buddha answers him. Whether all those questions, he says, if there's the view the world is eternal, the holy life cannot be lived. And if there's the view that the world is not eternal, the holy life cannot be lived. And the same way with the answers to those other questions. But he says, despite all that, there is birth, there's aging, there's death, there's sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, the destruction of which I prescribe here and now. So basically, the Buddha is telling him that, that's essentially what the Buddha felt was important in life. He declares this is suffering, this is the cause of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, and this is the path leading to the cessation of suffering. And even if all those other questions were answered, they would still have birth, aging, death, sorrow, and suffering, and ignorance. So it doesn't matter what the answer to those questions were, because it doesn't really pertain to practicing the Dhamma. So therefore he tells Malunkyaputta, remember what I have left undeclared as undeclared, those questions. But remember what I have declared, and what I have declared, because this is, as I mentioned, this is suffering, the Four Noble Truths. Because it is beneficial, it belongs to the fundamentals of the holy life. It leads to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. That is why I have declared it. Those other questions don't lead to that. And this monk, Malunkyaputta, it seems, was satisfied and delighted in the Buddha's, that explanation of the Buddha. So, that's the same question. Sometimes we get questions from people, do I have to believe in rebirth to be a Buddhist? No one has ever told me they're not going to be a Buddhist if I don't give them the answer to whether there's rebirth or not, or whether they believe in this or that. Because again, even that is not that pertinent, because there's suffering here and now. There's suffering in this moment with pain in your body. There's suffering in 10 minutes from now, 30 minutes from now, an hour from now, a week, 2 weeks, 1 year, 10 years from now. every day there's going to be some kind of mental or physical suffering, which doesn't depend on a rebirth, knowing rebirth, but it does depend on karma, because some of the suffering that you're experiencing now or in the next minutes or days or is some of it is going to be due to what you are doing now. So, understanding that our thoughts, speech, and actions have results, that's what's important. Of course, whether it leads to rebirth down the line many years from now, that's another thing. But the moment-to-moment rebirth is what a person should really understand with that. But anyway, so all these other questions that people might have, they're not that relevant. That's why the Buddha didn't answer them. Okay, now there's this, the Greater Discourse to Malunkyaputta, number 64. And this time, the monks were sitting around, and the Buddha came to talk to them. And he said, "Monks, do you remember the 5 lower fetters as taught to me?" So I think most of you know what the 5 lower fetters are. They're the fetter of, sense desire, ill will, restlessness and worry, doubt, and the belief in a self. So belief in a self, then sense desire, ill will, doubt, and restlessness and worry. So after the Buddha was asking them, do you remember them? So the same Malunkyaputta speaks up and says, "Venerable Sir, I remember the 5 lower fetters as taught by the Blessed One," or that meaning the Buddha. And when this was said, then the Buddha replies, "But Malunkyaputta, in what way do you remember the 5 lower fetters as taught by me?" And so he identifies, lists the 5 lower fetters. "Venerable Sir, I remember identity view," that means personality belief, "as a lower fetter. I remember doubt as a lower fetter. I remember adherence to rules and observances as a lower fetter." Actually, I didn't mention that just before that. "I remember sensual desire as a lower fetter. I remember ill will as a lower fetter." So restlessness and worry wasn't included in the lower fetter. It was the adherence to rites and rituals. So excuse me for that mistake. Sometimes all these lists of things, the mind puts them in the wrong order sometimes. So that's the way that this Malunkyaputta remembered the lower fetters. And so the Buddha replies to him, "To whom do you remember my having taught these 5 lower fetters in this way?" Because the Buddha doesn't think that that's the way he would have taught the 5 lower fetters, by just listing them in that way, because he was referring to Malunkyaputta, was thinking they were like the hindrances that come up, that just come up on their own without any underlying tendency. So that's the gist of this sutta. And then he said the wanderers of other sects would not agree with you and would confute you with the simile of the infant. So the Buddha gives some interesting little similes. He said if there was a young, tender infant, like a newborn baby, lying prone, he doesn't even have the notion of identity. So a newborn baby, as I mentioned in other, Dhamma talks, it doesn't have a sense of self yet. It doesn't even know it's a person, It hears things and it feels things, but it doesn't really know anything. So how could identity view arise in him if he doesn't even have it? But he says, yet the underlying tendency to identity view lies within him. So that means the reason why he was reborn in the first place is because in the past life, or many lives, he, that's the basic ignorance. So he was reborn because this clinging to the sense of I and self. So that underlying latent tendency, along with sense desire and ill will, these are things coming from the previous life. But when a baby is born, they don't really manifest right away. Or even in children, they may not manifest until later on as they get more exposed to things. How could the doubt arise in the teachings arise in the young person if they haven't even heard them yet? But yet the underlying tendency for these fetters underlies them. Now, some people might hear that and say, well, that's kind of strange way of talking about it, right? I mean, but so therefore, then Venerable Ananda says, it's the time, Blessed One, it's the time for the Buddha to teach the 5 lower fetters. Having heard it from the Blessed One, the bhikkhus will remember it. So Ananda, of course, being the Buddha's chief disciple, probably had got it right, probably understood the 5 lower fetters because he probably heard the talk, many times. But so then that was, the time for Ananda to ask the Buddha to teach the 5 lower fetters so people like Malunkyaputta could understand them properly. So, he tells the group of monks, here an untaught ordinary person who has no regard for the noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in the Dhamma, they abide with a mind obsessed and enslaved by identity view, and they do not understand as it actually is the escape from the arisen identity view. And when that identity view has become habitual and is uneradicated in him, it is a lower fetter. So as people grow up and they cling on to this idea, their sense of self, and they develop that strong attachment from it, and they don't know how it arises, and they don't know how to become free from it, then it's a lower fetter, because it's always there under the surface. They don't know how to get away from it. They don't understand it, how it arose, and they don't understand it, how it can be overcome. They just never think about it. So it stays as an underlying tendency and becomes a fetter, because every time conditions arise, then it's like the hindrance and the fetters too. So these lower fetters are like that. They come up because of the underlying tendency, and these tendencies were brought over from the previous lives. And so he repeats the same thing for the other fetters too. They're enslaved by doubt. They're enslaved by rules and observances, by lust and ill will. They do not understand as it actually is, the escape from those fetters. And when those fetters have become habitual and they become uneradicated in that person, it's a lower fetter. But then he says, a well-taught noble disciple does not abide with a mind obsessed and enslaved by identity view. And he understands that it actually is. He escaped from the arisen identity view, and together with the right view, the underlying tendency is abandoning him. So when he talks about the well-taught noble disciple, he's referring to a sotapanna, because a sotapanna has eradicated identity view. That's the first fetter, right? Sakkaya ditthi, the personality belief. And he does not abide with a mind obsessed and enslaved by doubt and to adherence to rules and observances, by lust and ill will. He understands well, as it actually is, the escape from these things. And so here's referring to a sotapanna, because a sotapanna, through its practice of the Eightfold Path and meditation, or for whatever reason, was able to overcome, you entered the stream, so you overcome the identity view, attachment to rites and rituals, and doubts, not necessarily overcoming sense desire and ill will, though. That comes later with the paths of once returning and never returning. And then the Buddha says, there is a path, Ananda, a way to abandoning of the 5 lower fetters. And anyone without relying on that path should be able to know or see or abandon the 5 lower fetters. This is not possible. So the Buddha is saying that there is a way to overcoming these fetters, which is, of course, the Eightfold Path. And anybody who doesn't rely on that Eightfold Path, especially the meditation, the sila, samadhi, and panya, for them to abandon the 5 lower fetters, he says, is not possible. And he gives a simile. If there's a great tree standing in the forest, and the great tree is possessed of heartwood, it is not possible that anyone shall cut out the heartwood without first cutting through the bark and sapwood. So if a person is going looking for a heartwood, unless he starts cutting into the center of the tree, he's got to cut through the bark and he's got to cut through the sap. He's not going to get to the heartwood without cutting through those. So the same way, one is not going to attain sotapanna without using the path leading for that. And then he gives some other similes. Suppose the river Ganges were full of water right up to the brim, so that crows could drink from it. And then a feeble man came thinking, oh, I'll swim across the Ganges River with my arms and get across to the further shore. Yet that weak person is not going to swim across the Ganges River if it's full up to the brim, because it's very wide and it's very powerful. So, the weak person's not going to do it. But a strong person could do it. So when the Dhamma is being taught to someone for the cessation of personality, if his mind does not enter into it and acquire confidence, steadiness, and resolution, then he can be regarded as like the feeble man, the person who's weak, who doesn't understand the Dhamma, who doesn't have confidence in the Dhamma, and who hasn't developed mindfulness and concentration. He regards these kind of people as weak, or weak-minded, because they don't know how to deal with these kind of fetters that arise, and they remain enslaved by them. And then the Buddha says, and what, Ananda, is the path, the way leading to the abandoning of the lower fetters? So then he says, here with the seclusion from the acquisitions, with the abandoning of unwholesome states, with the complete tranquilization of body inertia, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, he enters upon and abides in the first jhana. So he basically, saying that, you got to attain the first jhana. Whatever exists there in a material form, feeling, perception, and consciousness, he sees those as, impermanent and devoid of self. And he, turns his mind toward the tranquilization of all formations and the relinquishing of all attachments, and turns his mind toward realizing the nibbana. If he is steady in that, he attains the destruction of the taints. But if he does not attain the destruction of the taints, which basically is attaining arahantship, then, even if he doesn't attain arahantship, because of the desire for the Dhamma, that delight in the Dhamma, then with the destruction of the 5 lower fetters, he becomes one to attain is born in the pure abodes, or he becomes a anagami. So in abandoning the 5 lower fetters, you become an anagami. So in abandoning the 3 of those 5, you attain stream entry. By weakening the sense, desire, and ill will, you attain once returning. And by eradicating totally sense, desire, and ill will, you attain the never returning, which is the overcoming of all of those 5 lower fetters. And there's only what are called the 5 higher fetters remaining. And I've mentioned these in so many talks before. But then the Buddha goes on to say, by, stilling applied and sustained thought, one enters into the 2nd jhana, and then into the 3rd jhana, and then into the 4th jhana, and then even going through the formless jhanas up to the the cessation of the feeling and perception. So he goes through all those formless jhanas too. And so then the Buddha, then this monk asks him, Venerable Sir, if this is the path, the way to the abandoning of the 5 lower fetters, and how is it that some monks here gain that deliverance, or gain deliverance of mind, and some are said to gain deliverance by wisdom? So I guess Ananda was asking them questions. Some monks attain this, enlightenment or nibbana, which is called deliverance of the mind, or by the mind. And others are said to gain deliverance by wisdom. And the difference is in their faculties. The Buddha says the difference is in their faculties. So some people that are able to attain the jhanas fairly easily, or, maybe they dedicate their whole practice, and maybe after, 1 year or 2 years or whatever, they're able to go through all those 4 jhanas and then the formless jhanas, and developing insight from those, they attain the arahantship. But there's others who develop, like the 7 factors of enlightenment, practice the satipatthana and the 7 factors of enlightenment without attaining all of those formless jhanas. They have to attain at least 1 or 2, even to attain stream entry, really. But of course, there's some debate about that. But as I mentioned before, that you're attaining vipassana jhana. But you don't have to go and attain all these formless jhanas. But you gain the wisdom and insight through attaining at least the overcoming the hindrances, so the mind is bright and clear, and developing the insight into anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So that's called people who attain enlightenment without going through and attaining all the formless jhanas. They're said to be delivered by wisdom. Whereas those who go on to attain the form jhanas as well as all the formless jhanas and the cessation of feeling and perception, then they are said to gain deliverance by the mind. That means by concentration. So when it says deliverance by mind, that means that using concentration to develop it. Whereas deliverance by wisdom is following the developing the 7 factors of enlightenment and following the 4 foundations of mindfulness, leading through the contemplation of mental objects, which 7 factors of enlightenment are one of the last groups, and then realizing the 4 noble truths. So Buddha says, it's a difference in their faculties. And so people who are prone more to meditation, then, that's their faculty of concentration may be stronger. But those who go directly toward developing insight and wisdom, their faculty of wisdom may be stronger. So that's what the Buddha said. That was the end of that sutta. Doesn't say what the Venerable Malunkyaputta thought about it, but the Venerable Ananda was satisfied and delighted in the Buddha's words, although he's probably heard those things many times over. Okay, so those are the 2 suttas. Now, if anybody has any questions about any of those, then we can look at those questions and try to clarify them. So says, why is adherence to rites and rituals is a fetter? Well, it referred to the idea that just by doing rites and rituals alone could purify your mind and allow you to attain moksha or nibbana without meditating. Kind of like without meditating. So, there was a belief in India, and even today, they believe, some people believe in it, like bathing in the Ganges River will somehow purify your karma. Or people believe circumambulating Mount Kailash in Tibet, if you do it enough times, that'll guarantee you rebirth in heaven or enlightenment or whatever beliefs they have. But those are kind of rites and rituals that if you just, or bowing 1,000 times, is going to eliminate your fetters or hindrances, or, it allow you to attain enlightenment. So there's, these were adherents to rites and rituals, but it's to the expense of meditating and to the expense of other type of Dhamma practice. So let's say a person maybe break the precepts, but despite all that, he thinks that if he goes and bathes in the Ganges River every year or whatever, or circumambulates certain mountains, or go to shrines and make offering to all these various shrines you find in the Himalayas, that somehow, but with neglecting meditation, So that's what it means, actually. And so that's why it's a fetter. It's considered a fetter if you just do these kind of practices. Like even bowing to a Buddha statue. If you just bow to the Buddha statue and light candles and offer flowers all the time, but you don't meditate, then you're not going to attain enlightenment by just doing that. So that could also be considered a rite and a ritual that you may learn when you're young, right? So there's lots of rites and rituals that people learn from their parents when they're young, but maybe the parents or others never explained it in the right way, what their deeper meaning is, and they just said, do these things and, your life will be good or something. Or you'll be reborn with Brahma or something like that. But that's not the goal of Buddhism, to be reborn even in a heaven world or something. Anyway, that's why it's mainly that meditation is the way to attaining enlightenment, not relying on rites and rituals only. This next question: what fetters must you overcome to attain once returning or once returner? Well, you can read those in books, but you have to overcome the first three first. So you have to become a sotapanna first normally. But some people could attain directly the sakaragami or anagami without being a sotapanna, I suppose. But they would have had to break those the personality belief, attachment to rites and rituals, doubts, plus the sense desire and ill will. So the 5 lower fetters, basically, the ones we've been talking about the whole night, for this last half an hour or so. It's those 5 fetters. But you can attain sakaragami with just overcoming 3 and then weakening sense desire, ill will. Which underlying tendency aligns with the fetter of rites and rituals? Probably ignorance. The underlying tendency to ignorance. That means not knowing the truth of the path. So you're thinking that rites and rituals are going to get you there. And so according to the Dhamma, that's a wrong view, or that's going to be a hindrance. So it's because of ignorance, and because of not knowing the true path, what is the way and what is not the way. There's a lot of questions in this chat. Let me see. So did the Buddha ever mention whether there's a ground of being or a God? They're gods, but they're not creator gods. There's a lot of gods, and even the Buddha knew of them, but they're not creator gods. That's a whole different thing. There are gods, but they're not a creator God. They're gods. People are born there for attaining high states of meditation and so on, like Brahma and so on. But they're not a creator God. They think they are, but they're not. So that's the kind of a God that the Buddha didn't believe in. Somebody who created the world and has control over people's lives and minds. Not that there aren't gods or deities. There are those things. But that's not the question when they're asking the Buddha believed in the God. It's the idea of a creator God, almighty creator God. So did the Buddha ever mention whether being imbued with a life force is identical with the body? Again, that's a question that he probably wouldn't answer either, because that doesn't have anything to do with suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. The life force basically is also the the deathless element. It's hard to put words on that, life force. It's basically we can't really describe what it is. It's just, people might call it prana or chi, but it's what it keeps the body living. And the life force can no longer, when the body can no longer support the life force, it flees the body. So when your heartbeat or your breath stops and the oxygen no longer keeps the brain alive, then the consciousness, which is really that life force, but it's the consciousness that's the life force, the consciousness imbued with craving and desire. So anyway, these are very difficult questions, and even the Buddha probably wouldn't consider them important, as I've already mentioned. Okay, now you can read down below about next week. Prashant is telling people about there's going to be a requirement to have passcode. So he selected metta to be the passcode for our future Zoom program starting on this Sunday. So remember that, write that down, metta. And if it calls for a passcode, you write metta into that, and then you will be allowed into our meeting. Okay, this is another question. In your remarks, you indicated that belief in rebirth isn't a requirement for being a Buddhist. Is the core set of beliefs contained in the right view the minimum set of beliefs? Well, to be a Buddhist, you'd have the desire to, come to the end of suffering and to purify your mind, basically. So, to reach the end of suffering, you have to understand the law of karma and purify those negative things in the mind that, like breaking precepts and delusion, greed, hatred, and delusion, that keep us creating this kind of karma that causes us suffering. So that's the requirement. And belief that our habits get repeated. Every time you repeat a habit, that's a rebirth. That means they get stronger and they're going to perpetuate. So that kind of rebirth is what I've always mentioned in so many of my talks, the moment-to-moment rebirth. You have to understand that. That means every moment the mind of consciousness arises and changes. Every time you do something, you've changed in some way or another. That's a rebirth. From moment to moment, from day to day. That's how you got to understand how we are accumulating our habits day by day. And unless we change them, we're going to continue to be bound by them. So it's changing the way you think, changing the greed, hatred, and delusion. And delusion is not understanding the Dhamma. Delusion is believing in all these things like rites and rituals and other types of delusions, thinking it's going to help you. And I mean, those things may help you a little bit, but not for attaining total liberation from suffering. So, right view, I would say, and right view is understanding the Four Noble Truths. So that would be the minimum set of beliefs. Question. I have a doubt about base of infinite space and infinite consciousness. Are they impermanent? If they're impermanent, how are they infinite? They're impermanent because it's a state of mind, and you've created it in your mind. And if you die in that state, you might live 5,000 eons. But at some point, the karma that got you, they call it infinite space. That's why, it's a mental state. It's not that there's some entity out there called infinite space. No, not the astronomical thing that space is infinite. No, this is a state of mind, infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception. These are states of consciousness that you work yourself into. And that's why if you're trying to attain enlightenment through cultivating these formless jhanas, you've got to meditate, come out of those and meditate and see how they were just mind-made and they're impermanent. That means you got to come out of it while you're living. You know, as long as you have the body and you can stay in there for a couple of days and come out, but it's impermanent. And so it's not referring to a metaphysical or astronomical kind of thing in infinite space. No, that's not what infinite space is. But it's a way of, overcoming, all the different type of perception. But even that has to be overcome to attain neither perception or non-perception, and then the cessation of feeling and perception. When you attain Nirodha Samapatti, then even infinite space disappears. Did the Buddha mention if there's a ground of being? All these popular words these days. He called it the deathless element. He said the unborn is there. There is the unborn. There is the uncreated. There is the amata Dhamma. That means a state that was never born and never dies. Leave it at that. Nothing else. Don't call it cosmic consciousness. Don't call it ground of being. Other people call it that. Let them call it that. But the Buddha didn't call it that. The Buddha in the Pali Suttas, he says there is the unborn, uncreated, uncompounded, unmade, the state that wasn't made, and therefore it's never unmade. It was never born and never dies. He said that is Nibbana. But other people want to call it ground of being, want to call it God. What for? It confuses people. But anyway, people can call it that or relate to it, but the Buddha didn't use the terms that we're familiar with in our study of the suttas, is those ones who read the Udana. The Udana Sutta is where the Buddha talks about. There is this unborn, uncreated, unmade, uncompounded, deathless element. And even so when he gave the first sermon, he says, open is the path to the deathless. So the deathless is probably the best term for Nibbana. That means a state that was never died, it was never born and never died. So, you could say, okay, that means eternal. Okay, if you want to call it that, you call it that. But the Buddha didn't call it that. Because the people get the misunderstandings with that, can get misunderstandings of that, because they cling to it as, oh, myself is going to be eternal, and so on. So anyway, these, there's lots of terms you're going to hear, but and people want to ascribe that the Buddha meant that, and so on, but or Buddha nature is a term. Even I've kind of used that sometimes. Now, we can use terms as long as we understand what it is and not give it some other meaning that would somehow, distort the real meaning of the Dhamma. Okay, friends, I think that's enough for these questions. And so we'll get ready to have a few stretches and then have our evening meditation, okay? So we'll take a couple minutes break. Okay, friends, we'll go ahead and start a few stretches before meditating. So just stand straight, relax your shoulders, and gently close your eyes. Just feel your feet pressing the floor. Just feel the weight of the arms and hands hanging from the shoulders. Just feel the clothing touching the skin of the body in different places. And feel the head balanced on top of the neck. Try to mentally feel that outline of the standing body. And then begin some three-part breathing. If you saw the yoga session last Sunday, and try to start the air in the lower lobes, draw the air up through the middle to the top of the lungs, holding the air in a couple of seconds, and then the out breath. And the next in breath, raise the arms over the head, interlock the fingers, turn the palms up, stretch the head back, arch your lower back. On the out breath, turn the palms down, touch the top of your head. Again, in breath. Out. Once more. Hold the stretch longer. Release the fingers. Out breath, arms back to the sides. Feel the sensations. Close the eyes. Feel the inner subtle sensation. If you can't feel that, just feel your feet pressing the floor. Remember standing, standing. Just let go of your thoughts. Just let the thoughts come and go in the back of the mind. Always keep your attention in or on the body. Feeling the sensation, the breathing. Okay, the next in breath, push up on the toes while raising the arms up over the head, facing the palms toward each other, and stretch up. The out breath, come back down, arms to the side, heels to the floor. Use the breath to help lift and lower the body, blowing up a helium balloon. Out. In. relax. And just gently close the eyes, just feel the body. Feel the subtle vibrations, sensations, any aches or pains. Okay, now spread the feet apart about 3 feet. And we're going to do twisting from side to side, holding your arms out. So breathe in. On the out breath, look to the right and twist to the right as far as you can. Keep the eyes focused on the hand going back. In breath, come back to the front. Let the feet turn with the body. Next out breath to the left. In breath back to the front. Just continue that. Out breath to the right. In breath to the front. In out breath to the left. In breath once more to each side. Out breath. In the left. And lower the arms, relax. Keeping the legs spread apart, we'll do side bending. On an out breath, bend over the right side, letting the hands slide down below the knee, if you can. In breath, lift up. And the other side, out breath. In to the right, out breath. In. Once more to each side. Out breath, relax. Feel the whole body. Each foot pressing the floor. Hands touching the sides. Head balanced on top. Just remember standing, standing, standing. Now bring the legs back together. Okay, we're going to do one last exercise, a backward and forward bending. You have to be careful with the The back bending, especially this exercise, when you lift up from a back bend, there could be powerful rush of energy coming up the spine that could cause the body to tremble or even like you're going to pass out. So don't bend back too far the first time. Keep the hands out, palms facing outward. On an in-breath, make a gradual V with the arms as you bend back and spread the arms out to the sides. Carefully lift up on the in-breath. And on out-breath, lower the hands down to the floor. Try to touch your toes or touch the floor. Try to keep the legs straight if possible. And begin standing up. Turn the palms outward. And breathe in. Lift the arms up and out to the side. Look up at the ceiling. Carefully lift up on the in-breath. Keeping the arms out, and out-breath, lower the hands. Again, begin standing up, turn the palms outward, make the gradual V, the arms out to the side. Lift up, out breath. Try to hold that downward stretch a little longer. And breathe in, bring the hands to the chest. Out breath back to the side. Just feel the whole body vibrating, pulsating. Try to feel or imagine that organic aliveness, life force in the body. Okay, so we'll get ready for sitting meditation. Okay, friends, so we'll have our meditation practice. So I'm going to turn off the video as normal. I just try to Sit straight, keeping the head and back in a straight line. Gently close your eyes. Just feel the weight of the body pressing the floor, the seat. Just feel where the buttocks press the floor, where the feet underneath. Just feel those points of contact, the earth vibration of hardness. And feel your hands and fingers touching. Try to feel the subtle vibrations, pulsations in your hands or fingers. And feel the weight of the arms hanging from the shoulders. Relax the shoulders. Feel where the clothing touches the skin of the shoulders, the upper arm, the chest. Feel those tactile sensations, also the earth element vibrations. And try to feel or establish that gentle inward curve of the lower spine that helps to support the upper body, and gently lift the back. Imagine the spinal column, spaces between the spinal vertebrae, so blood and life force can freely circulate through the nervous system. And then feel the head balanced on top of the neck. You keep your chin lifted up, level to the floor. And just feel your face, some sensations of the face, the facial skin stretched over the front of the skull. Feel your lips touching together. The lower lip touches the upper lip. Feel any the sensation of dryness or moistness of the lips. And feel the tongue laying in the mouth, that moist saliva. Feel where the teeth touch together, or the gums. It's those raw physical sensations, bodily sensations. And feel the nose, the outer nose. And take a few deep, slow breaths to feel the air moving through the nostrils. You might even hear the sound if you breathe deep enough. Try to take a 3-part breath. You can hear those different sounds from the lower lobes, middle lobes, and upper lobes, creating different sounds going through the nostrils. Holding the air a few moments, just feel that sitting body and feel the out breath. Take a couple more 3-part breaths just to feel the breathing body. Just breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. And now we'll count the breaths from 1 to 10 to try to gain a better concentration. Not let the mind wander while you're counting the breaths. Try to keep taking some 3-part breaths if you can. Now the next expanding in breath, mentally count 1. Holding the breath a couple seconds, and with the contracting out breath, also count 1. Next expanding in breath 2. Hold the air. And the contracting out breath 2. In breath 3. Out breath 3. In breath 4. Out breath 4. In breath 5. Out breath 5. In breath 6. Out breath 6. In breath 7. Out breath 7. In breath 8. Out breath 8. In breath 9. Out breath 9. In breath 10. Out breath 10. Now discontinue the deep breathing, the controlled breathing. Just let the breath return to its own uncontrolled rhythm. Just continue to feel it. Feel the more kind of irregular movements, the shorter expanding and contracting sensations. Just feel that inner stillness created by the deep breathing. Just follow the subtler movements of expanding and contracting. Feeling the sensation in the abdomen or the rib cage or chest. Try to feel where the clothing rubs against the skin of the stomach or rib cage or chest as it expands and contracts. Use that as your points of concentration or awareness. Just know when the breath is coming in and knowing when the breath is going out. And knowing is the awareness. It's like looking down through a microscope or turning up the power of a microscope. Just try to notice the whole in-breath from beginning to end. Might only be a second long or so. The brief pause. Feel the contracting out breath. The brief pause. Just notice how each breath is different. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. Sometimes it's an easy breath. Sometimes a difficult breath. It's always changing. You can use these brief mental rememberings if it helps you to stay focused. Mentally be aware of in with the incoming breath. Feel the pause. Feel the sitting body and then the outgoing breath. Out, out. And the sitting. It is in, sitting. out, out, sitting. Or if you prefer, just simply breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Just the ongoing, continuous, present moment, connection to the present moment. This body is just sitting and breathing. Just remember that much. It's not much to remember. Just breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. It's called mindfulness of breathing. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Feeling the breath body within the larger physical body. Feeling all those different little sensations. At the same time, be alert for thoughts sneaking up into the mind to steal your attention away. If the mind gets carried away in thoughts, recognize it as thinking. Gently let go of the thought. Just take a deep, slow breath, bring the mind back into the body. Get recentered, grounded. Or you can come back and take a 2 or 3 three-part breaths from time to time. If it helps you to stay connected to in the body. Just get out of your thoughts and into the body. Just feeling more and more subtle sensations in different parts of the body. Along with the breathing, Sensations of breathing are always there in the center. In and through the breathing process, you can notice other sensations in your arms or head or legs or feet. They just naturally arise within the consciousness, along with the breathing. Those are all just present moment vibrations arising in the present moment. Be alert if any unpleasant sensations grab your attention, like some itching or biting sensation, some aches or pain. This body is full of so many different kinds of sensations. Pleasant sensations, painful sensations, and neutral sensations. It's the pleasant sensations, especially also the painful sensations that grab the mind's attention. To worry about them, or want them, or to reject them. That goes alongside the breathing. They're occurring at the same time. The breath is going on, but there's also various sensation that the mind is reacting to. If we keep that connection to the breathing, then we won't get totally lost into the distractions or feelings. So breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Breath by breath, moment by moment. Five aggregates of clinging are just continuously arising and vanishing, arising, changing, vanishing, along with the breathing. So if the mind is calm enough, you can sort of identify the aggregate. This is material form, the physical sensations. This is feeling the painful or pleasant quality of them. Perception is the recognition of the body part or myself. The mental reactions, your thoughts, liking, disliking, worrying. Fear. And then the consciousness itself, with the sense of yourself, I or me, it's meditating. Be aware of any drowsiness that might arise. The hindrance of sloth and torpor. So straighten up the body, come back and do some 3-part breathing. To help waken up, to regrounded in the body. While you're contemplating, you can also reflect on the Four Noble Truths. If you notice suffering arises in your body and mind, this is suffering. This is the cause of suffering. What is the cessation of suffering? And the path leading to the cessation of suffering. If you find yourself totally lost in thought, take a deep 3-part breath to bring the mind back into the body. Take a few 3-part breaths to get re-grounded, centered in the body, calm the mind down. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Sensations come and go. Perceptions come and go. Thoughts come and go. Reactions come and go. These are all just the changing conditions. 5 aggregates coming and going through the body and mind, the flow of impermanence. Just underneath that, all that change and permanence of mental chaos is the ever-present dimension of the deathless, the awareness. The present moment. It's always there, literally just beneath your nose. Whenever you feel something in the body at that moment, mind is in the present moment. So if the mind is calm enough, you have a good sense of detachment, onlooking awareness. Just try to feel the body and mind as an empty house with nobody at home to answer the call, knocking on the doors and windows. There's a sensitive microphone in the house that knows the present moment awareness. Just allow the knower and the known to fade into the background. Just let the knowing be there. There's nothing known and no knower that knows. The moment you identify a knower or the known, then suffering arises, attachments arise. Suffering is identifying or clinging to the knower or the known. The cause of suffering is that attachment and ignorance. Suffering ceases when the knower and the known cease. And the path leading to the cessation of the knower and the known is just this Noble Eightfold Path. Right view, right thought, right speech, intention, action, livelihood, right mindfulness, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Balancing of the spiritual faculties of faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. The development of the factors of enlightenment. What else do you need? Whether the world is eternal or not eternal. Other metaphysical, speculative questions. Let that bell bring the mind back to the present moment. Dukkha pata ca nidukkha bhaya pata ca nibbaya soka pata ca nisoka hontu sabbe pipanino. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. In this way may all beings live with mindfulness and wisdom. Thus spoke the Buddha. Okay, now let's spend the last few minutes cultivating vibrations of metta in our own body and mind, toward our own body and minds, radiating that out to others. So a good way of doing that is to, again, take some 3-part breaths, do some 3-part breathing, holding in the breath several seconds to imagine that oxygenated blood and life force spreading through the nervous system of the body and mind, tranquilizing any negativity. And on the out breath, feel that relaxation of the body and mind. That's sending metta to your own body and mind, doing deep, slow breathing. Cells of the body are happy and the mind gets concentrated. The mind gets happy. On the next couple of breaths, send these same vibrations, especially as you're holding in the breath, and on the out breath, just imagine these waves of metta vibrations of pure love, pure energy, pure wisdom, going back to your family members, your households. If you know anybody who's sick and suffering, you can send them a few breathfuls of metta. And with each out breath, just imagine those vibrations of metta, pure wisdom, pure love, pure energy, radiating outwards further across the fields, the towns and cities, the countryside, tranquilizing all negative energy in its path. Just with the idea that may all beings be well, mindful, and wise. May all beings be free from greed, hatred, fear, and ignorance. May all beings be able to hear and practice the Dhamma, to gain the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. Just imagine these thought vibrations just encompassing the whole earth. Tranquilizing all the negative vibrations in the minds of people. With the thought, may all beings be able to live peacefully and harmoniously together, understanding the noble truths, understanding the ultimate interconnectedness and interdependence of all things. May all beings be well, peaceful, and wise. May all beings be well, peaceful, and wise. Just like a mantra reverberating throughout space. Well, peaceful, and wise. In this meditation, I invite you to chant the sound of sadhu 3 times with the breathing. Take a deep breath and do the chanting on a long out breath. Feel that vibration in your body and mind. Breathe in. Now place the hands at the edge of the knees. Take one more deep breath. While you breathe in, stretch the head back, pull the hands against the knees, arch your lower spine. Hold it a few moments. Lift the head up, and on an out breath, press the chin to the top of the chest to stretch the neck vertebrae. Lift the chin up level on an in-breath. On the out-breath, relax and put a smile on your face. Okay, friends, so it's nice having you with us this evening, and I hope you all, were able to get some peaceful moments during that meditation period, and try to continue to meditate every day in between the formal meditations. Practice the M&Ms and general mindfulness. So remember, mindfulness today keeps dukkha away, and a sutta a day keeps confusion away. So try to read some sutta or Dhammapada verse. The more we reflect on that, less time for your mind to get lost in unwholesome, negative types of thoughts.
Thank you, Bhante.
You're all welcome, and don't remember about if you're going to attend on Sunday or next week, then remember that password of metta that you might have to use to get into the program.
The word metta is in small letters.
Okay.
Thank you.
Small letters, but big in meaning, right?
Thank you,
Bhante.
Thank you,
Bhante.
Okay, friends, until we see each other again, Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya.